It started with a cry, thin muffled, almost swallowed by the walls. Officer Daniel Carter had been on the force for more than a decade, long enough to know when a sound clawed its way under your skin. That morning in Ridgewood, Indiana, he was running on caffeine and too little sleep when dispatch crackled through. Unit 12 welfare check. Neighbors reporting strange noises at 209 Birchwood Lane. He sighed, adjusted the mirror, caught the tired hollows under his eyes. The same haunted look that always returned in October. Something about the cold air and falling leaves dragged him back to nights, locked in a foster home closet, pounding on wood, waiting for someone, anyone to care. Birchwood Lane looked like a picture from a magazine. Freshly cut lawns, neat fences, Halloween pumpkins still out on porches. You'd think kids here only worried about scraped knees and homework. But the house at 209 stood out, shutters, hanging loose garden, overrun newspapers piled at the door, like no one cared anymore. Mrs. Klein from next door hurried over in her apron, hands twisting nervously. "Thank God you're here, officer," she whispered. "For 3 nights I've heard crying. Not normal crying, like trapped." A jogger chimed in. "My wife and I almost called yesterday, but, well, you know how people are. Didn't want to get involved." Those words froze Daniel harder than the October air. Didn't want to get involved. He'd heard it his whole childhood, when adults looked away from bruises, from empty dinner plates, from kids begging silently for help. His pulse picked up. He walked to the door, knocked. "Police. Mr. and Mrs. Hall." Nothing. Knocked harder. Silence. And then there it was again, a tiny whimper, followed by soft, rhythmic tapping like little hands against wood. His chest clenched. He'd made that sound once, 6 years old, praying someone would open the door. The front door was locked, the back too, but one basement window sat cracked open. Daniel called for backup protocol, said to wait, but when that whisper floated out, "Help, please," he couldn't. He slid the window up, squeezed inside. The basement smelled of mildew and dust. His flashlight cut through the dark beam, landing on stacks of boxes, old furniture, and then he saw it. A pet crate, metal bars. Inside, a little girl curled up like a forgotten animal. Blonde hair, tangled, pink pajamas, smeared with dirt, cheeks streaked with tears. She couldn't have been more than 5. Daniel's voice caught, "Hey, sweetheart, I've got you." He unlatched the door, reached in. Her hands, so small, so light, clung to him like a lifeline. She buried her face in his shoulder, trembling so hard he thought she might break. "Backup's here," someone called upstairs. Daniel started toward the stairs, but the child suddenly lifted her head and pointed frantic at a picture frame on the wall. A family photo, 2 parents, 2 little girls. Daniel's gut twisted. He was holding one. Where was the other? Upstairs told its own story. Mail stacked dishes, unwashed toys scattered. In the children's bedroom, there were 2 of everything: beds, dressers, clothes. But one bed hadn't been touched in weeks. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Daniel asked gently. Her whisper was fragile, almost lost. "Grace." He knelt, holding the photo. "Grace, can you tell me about the other girl here?" Her lip quivered, eyes filling. She touched the picture and breathed out one word: "Hannah." His stomach dropped. Another child. Missing. That's when Sarah Lopez arrived, Child Protective Services, 32 sharp, suit covering exhaustion that came from too many cases, too many nights without answers. She crouched beside Grace, introduced herself softly. Grace peeked from behind Daniel's arm but said nothing. Daniel explained about the photo, the empty bed, the missing sister. Sarah's face fell. She dug into her tablet. School records show Hannah Hall, age 8. Last attended Ridgewood Elementary 3 weeks ago. No transfer paperwork, no foster placement, nothing. She's just gone. Grace grew restless, pointing toward the street each time a car passed, eyes searching. "She's waiting for Hannah," Daniel murmured. Sarah's jaw tightened. Paperwork was vague, outdated dead ends everywhere. It was as if Hannah had been erased. That night they took Grace to Maple Haven Shelter. She clung to Daniel's shirt as they carried her inside, whispered one last thing that broke him. Hannah scared too. Not was. Is. Days blurred into frantic calls, dead-end leads, until finally Sarah found her. Hannah was enrolled across town under a distant cousin's care. When Daniel and Sarah stepped onto that playground, they didn't need to ask which child she was. Hannah had the same blonde hair, but her eyes were older, watchful, like she never stopped scanning for danger. The moment she saw them, she ran. "Where's Grace? Is she okay?" Sarah knelt. "She's safe. She's been asking for you every day." Hannah's knees buckled with relief. The reunion at Maple Haven, no one forgot. Grace sprinted across the room. Hannah dropped to her knees and they collided in an embrace that made even hardened cops wipe their eyes. Grace whispered, "I saved your side of the bed." Hannah stroked her hair, checked her hands, asked if she'd eaten. At 8 years old, she'd been more mother than sister. That night, Hannah told them about Professor Allen, well-respected college lecturer, hailed in the community as a mentor. He'd visited their mom when she got sick when their dad disappeared. And when the girls begged for help, he told them families should handle their own problems. He'd suggested splitting the girls, said Grace was too little Hannah old enough to be responsible. Daniel's fists clenched. A man with authority respected had seen two terrified kids and chosen convenience over care. The system, of course, had its own convenient plan. Fast-track adoption, a pristine couple, the Westons' perfect house, spotless records. They smiled warmly, but when Hannah asked, "Can Grace sleep in my room?" when she's scared, the foster mom said gently, "No, sweetie. You'll have your own rooms. It's time to learn independence." Grace's grip on Hannah's hand tightened. "But she needs me," Hannah whispered. The foster dad smiled polished. "She'll learn bravery on her own, and you'll learn you don't have to worry anymore." Daniel's jaw locked. They weren't cruel people, just blind. They wanted the girls to forget their past when all the girls needed was someone to respect it. At the shelter later, Hannah said quietly, "They want to love us the right way, but they don't know what the right way is. Me and Grace, we already work. Why do grown-ups keep trying to fix that?" Enter Dr. Maya Reynolds, child psychologist. She sat with the sisters, drew birds on paper. "If you could design the perfect family, what would it be?" she asked. Hannah answered without hesitation. "People who don't try to make us forget. People who let us be together." Dr. Reynolds nodded, turning to Sarah. "These girls don't need separation. Their bond isn't weakness. It's survival. Break it now, you break them." But time was running. Professor Allen was being honored as keynote speaker at the upcoming National Child Safety Conference. The mayor wanted clean headlines. Daniel was warned back off or get reassigned to traffic. Meanwhile, the adoption board was set to finalize the Weston's placement by Friday. 72 hours. Either they found proof against Allen in a better placement, or the sisters would be torn apart again. The conference was a theater of hypocrisy. Allen stood on stage, suit crisp, smile practiced, preaching about family autonomy and avoiding unnecessary system involvement. Applause thundered. Then Dr. Reynolds stepped up. Her voice calm, her slides cold with numbers. Ridgewood had the highest sibling separation rates in the state, patterns traced back to one man's influence. She never said his name. She didn't need to. Murmurs spread, eyes turned. When a judge in the back stood and asked Professor Allen, "Do you deny it?" advising neighbors not to report suspected neglect. His face drained of color. He stammered, hid behind rhetoric. But the truth was already loose. The next morning in court, it all came to a head. The state's attorney motioned to place Hannah and Grace with the Westons. Papers signed, everything tidy. Judge Parker glanced over the room. "Any objections?" Sarah rose. Her voice shook, then steadied. "Yes, Your Honor, I am petitioning for emergency custody with intent to adopt." Gasps filled the room. The Weston lawyer barked objections, Conflict of interest, irregular procedure. But Sarah pressed on. These girls need a family that understands trauma isn't erased by new furniture. They need parents who honor their bond. My husband and I are ready to make that permanent, Dr. Reynolds testified. Daniel sat heart pounding as Hannah squeezed her sister's hand, stood and spoke. The Westons are nice, but they don't know how to love kids like us. Ms. Lopez does. She knows we've been scared. She knows we take care of each other. Silence. Then the gavel. Emergency custody granted to the Lopez family. Grace and Hannah walked out of that courthouse hand in hand, sunlight catching their hair. Outside, Sarah's husband waited with their two kids already holding handmade signs that said, "Welcome home." Grace whispered, "Is this real?" Hannah squeezed back, "Yes, we're going home." That night around a noisy dinner table, Grace drew a picture of 6 people holding hands. At the edge, she drew Daniel too, because some heroes don't disappear when their shift ends. They stay. They become family in ways the system never planned. Months later, adoption finalized. The Lopez family was 6 strong. Professor Allen, he resigned quietly, reputation shattered. No big headlines, just the quiet downfall of a man who thought he was untouchable. And Hannah and Grace, they laughed more now, argued over toys, cried less at night. They were finally allowed to just be kids. But here's the thing, this story doesn't wrap up neat and clean. Because for every Hannah and Grace, there are kids still out there tonight, waiting behind locked doors while adults debate what's appropriate. So I'll ask you, what matters more, reputation and protocol, or listening when a child whispers for help? Drop your thoughts below. Would you have done what Daniel did, broken protocol to save her? Or would you have waited like so many adults who looked away? Let's talk about it, because silence is what keeps kids trapped.